Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the East Herts Council Human Resources Committee on Wednesday, the 23rd of November. Item 1, apologies. We've received apologies for absence from Councillor Newton, who is going to be substituted by Councillor Buckmaster. Thank you very much for coming. Item number 2 are the minutes from the 21st of September. Receive the minutes. Do we have Councillor Alder? Proposed acceptance, thank you. Councillor Ruffles, thank you for seconding. Any comments on them before we? Councillor Ruffles.
Yeah, Chairman, I know we're not on this particular committee allowed to pick up things from the minutes, which always strikes me as being a strange thing. But there are one or two things. Councillor Dumont mentioned the recruitment of the disabled people, for example, and are we going to get a report on that at this meeting? And then there are matters from the planning quarter that Councillor Bull brings up regularly. Where do we pick up those things once we've approved the minutes?
Do you wish to respond? Thank you.
There. So in terms of the disability aspect, we can go away and do a report for you on that and the things we're doing to encourage applicants from disability, for people with disabilities or other minority groups. It's not just about disabilities, it's all of it. So we can do a follow-up on that for you. But we will obviously do a focus on disabilities for you. In terms of the planning, I was going to give you a full update on where we are on planning recruitment as part of this, if that's okay. Does that? Yeah.
Councillor Ruffles. Councillor Dumont.
I think as I've been referenced, and thank you very much, Councillor Ruffles, I think the point was specifically in the last meeting about disability, and we noted that some work to be done with the trust, I forget their name now, to promote jobs hadn't been done. And I think it was acknowledged here that perhaps that wasn't an onerous piece of work, and it does send them in the meetings that an update would come specifically on that this evening. So I think, thank you, that's the question I asked, and that's the point you're raising.
So my apologies on that. Claire, who's doing that piece of work, is on leave this week, so I apologise for that. And I'm not making excuses, but we've had a few IT issues getting to access stuff. So I can get that update to you by email before the next committee, if that would work for you, and then be open to discussion on it with any of you. Would that be acceptable?
Yes, it would. It would. But...
Thank you. If you could email it and then it can go on the next agenda for the next meeting. Thank you. Councillor Alder.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to say, in regard to the point we've just made about things being raised, I just wanted to express my thanks that the percentages numbers are now with people with numbers, proper names, because I think that's much more meaningful to people. You talk about X percentage and then you're talking about 2 members of staff, it puts it into perspective. So thank you for that. So they did notice on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Yes. So we've got a proposer, we've got a seconder, we need to vote. All right. All those in favour of accepting these minutes? Thank you very much. Item number 3, declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? There's the rolling ones about the parish and town councils. Thank you. Nothing else. Thank you very much. Item number 4, chairman's announcements. I've got nothing new to say except please can we remember to use the microphones, because as we know that you have to be very close to them. Okay, thank you. Item number 5, the health and safety quarterly review. Peter Dickinson, we've all read it. I understand there aren't any minutes because there was an issue. Is that the outage again? The IT, there's been a huge IT outage.
Yeah, it's had a big impact.
So is there anything you wish to add to these, to to the review?
No, I think we've covered everything for that quarter. Nothing new was raised through safety committee. So there are no issues or problems to report back. Thank you.
No, I mean, it was a very good full report. Thank you very much indeed. It's good to see the how few accidents there have been and the nature of them when there have been, which are minor accidents. But the fact that you're still noting them and taking account of them is important. Thank you for doing that. Councillor Alder.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It's in regard to the non-reportable accidents. What escalates a non-reportable to a reportable, and how do you actually sort of identify those? And have you had any that have been escalated to reportable?
Right, yes, I can answer that. And for a non-reportable accident to be escalated, it has to fall within a specified criteria defined by the Health and Safety Executive. And then it falls under the reporting of injuries, diseases, dangerous occurrence regulations, and you have to complete an online form on all of those the nature of those incidents. They go direct to the Health and Safety Executive. We've not had any that are reportable under the RIDDOR regulations. So, for example, an injury that arises from an over 7-day absence due to the result of the accident would trigger the requirement to look at the RIDDOR. Loss of a limb would do. A death would be reportable immediately. So they're quite serious in nature. They also include collapsing structures or failure of structures, such as lifting equipment, cranes, scaffold, etc., which would fall under the HSE's purview. They look after building sites and construction. So we haven't got anything of that nature. So we don't have anything. And as I say, the accidents that we have got are all minor. It cuts, grazes, slips and trips. So nothing of those would fall under the RIDDOR reporting criteria. So if it happens to staff here, I will deal with those and I will make that report, and Sport and Leisure Management for the pools will do that directly themselves as well as the managing agent.
No, I'm really thinking about the users. I wasn't thinking particularly about staff. I was thinking about
Again,
users.
yeah,
And have you had any that have been
No.
escalated?
no, we haven't had none.
And how would you identify that anyway? If they
That
something that's happened.
that
to
would
a-
be reported by the pool through the pool contract manager, and they would also inform me. So they would let me know if there had been any reportable under RIDDOR. They would inform me of that. I can't have access to the data for GDPR, but they would tell me if there has been any, and there haven't been any users of the facilities that fall under RIDDOR reporting criteria.
Yes, it was really subsequently that something happened. They'd had what appeared to be a minor incident
That would have
that
to be investigated.
transpired later to a more serious.
That would be escalated by the pool. They would, if the injured party gets in touch with them to inform them that there has been an escalation in the condition, they would very much want to know that and would escalate investigations into what happened. They look at all accidents that occur on site, so they would keep a record. They would then be able to trace that injury back to that event, and then they would provide that information if it required further investigation.
Right, thank you.
Right, I've got questions from first Councillor Ruffles and then Councillor Buckmark.
I want to be a bit, because it's going to be a fairly short meeting, I think, your indulgence just to say one thing before I make just a slightly more serious point, how much I enjoy reading these papers, because apart from anything else, the terminology I've not been used to, the skill execution error description of someone who bumps into their swimming instructor. It's just nice and new and fresh to me. And I didn't know what APCOA really was in connection with our car parks, and to learn that it's the Airport Parking Corporation of America, it just lightens the load as you're reading through the minutes. But the more serious bit, in a sense, is just to acknowledge the extra work that self-inflicted, because we've closed Harford Theatre, that the pantomime in the drill hall is giving to health and safety, because it's a very, very different venue, and we're handling large numbers of people in the usual way in a building which isn't basically designed for that purpose. So hats off to those who are working hard to make sure that it's safe for us. And
Absolutely, yeah. The Hertford Theatre staff who delivered the production last year at the Southern Maltings have got a bigger venue this time, but they've also got quite a very well written out safety plan. I've been supporting them with that. I'm going to be going on site at some point next week to see how things are going, but they're very, very mindful of public and employee safety, and that's first and foremost amongst delivering hopefully a well-attended event.
And I just wonder how many of us were surprised to learn that the life of a chair is 7 years. I looked around my house and thought, oh,
They get a lot of use.
Thank you, Councillor Ruffles. That was a really valuable contribution. Thank you. Councillor Buckmaster.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is as a substitute. I don't often get to read these, and actually I really enjoy reading them. I find them very interesting, and actually I do appreciate the new chairs. I really like them. One thing I wanted to say, it sort of follows on from what Councillor Alder was saying about the percentages and the numbers. On your charts, your tables, and you mentioned that Grange Paddocks is always high due to the footfall, but in fact I was interested in the percentage. You know, is it, if we saw it as a percentage of their footfall, would it actually look high in that respect?
I mean, I could ask them to produce that as a percentage, definitely. What we look at is the picture overall, and it doesn't tend to vary a great deal. Obviously, during summer, where there is a higher usage and it's a large new facility, it attracts a lot of footfall. Whereas if you look at the smaller facilities such as Ward Freeman and Leventhorpe, they do not. So it's a relatively small affair. And of course, with Hartham not being fully online yet, that tends to be the runner-up after Grange Paddocks. I can certainly ask SLM if they can give us some percentage figures to look at, and just to see how it measures across those times. Happy to do that, thank you.
Thank you. I feel a bit guilty asking for that, as I'm only a substitute.
No, that's all important. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Yeah. Oh, sorry, I missed you, Councillor Ball. Oh, has it? Right. Thank you. Yeah, I've got no questions. It's good to see about the lone working devices and the training filtering through. Thank you very much for doing that. So I don't think we need to vote on this, do we? Because we haven't. We're just receiving that. And then we're on to, I mean, this is a short agenda because we've got no annual papers due, and Simon is still off ill, but he is coming back to work, so hopefully he'll be back full time soon. Item number 6, the human resources management statistics, and we're fortunate that Ellie Starling's still here and can cover that. Have you got anything? Wait, I don't know if we've got any, if you want to go to questions first, or if you've got questions. Okay, right, questions for this. It's on Councillor Buckmaster.
Thank you. I think you are going to answer my question when you give your report, because it was about the planning and the percentage of vacancies in the planning department.
My intention is to give you a full up-to-date report on where we are on that, what we're doing, and all of the different things we are trying to attract people to East Herts Council in those roles.
So that's coming in the separately in a separate report then, is it?
My intention was, I'm going to put my hand up, and I did mess up. I didn't send the second report, but I've got a verbal update for you, which I will put into writing and follow up for you. So I can give you that HR and payroll update now, or whenever we finish this item.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Alder.
It's 3.3, the long-term absences. One of the reasons is minor reasons. How can somebody have minor reasons and be off long-term sick? That's just seemed to me to be a contradiction. 3.3, long-term absence, Q2. It's the penultimate line of 3.3. It's page 33.
It's 3310.
Oh, beg your pardon, sorry. Yeah, 33, yeah, it is 3310.
Sorry. COVID, in some cases, more serious diseases, and work-related stress, although we haven't had any work-related stress for a while, but non-work-related stress as well. And the rest is made up of things like stomach upsets, migraines, and the combination of the two is what makes up that percentage. Does that answer your question?
Well, so somebody's had those conditions over a long period, long-term absence. It just seemed to me a bit of a contradiction in terms to have somebody on long-term absence with minor reasons.
So we have a person who has been off for a while who we are trying through a process to get back to work. And there's more to it than just that, but at the moment they're reporting as absence through sickness. But we're handling it outside because there are other issues. Does that?
I'm sure you'll keep us in the picture.
We will.
Next meeting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Ball, please.
Yeah, vacant posts, the old chestnut, planning, am I on or not off? That one's not working. Oh, that's better, that one. Yeah, the vacancies, and 20 of them are planning. Are we still in the dire straits? Can you answer that one, or is that
That was going to be part of my brief on what we're doing about the whole planning
right?
issue.
Okay,
It is worrying, so we're having to do things a little bit differently.
right.
But we are in a national shortage. If you go on Indeed, on a certain day, there were 86 planning jobs
Right,
in Hertfordshire and Essex alone. So we're up against a lot of other people
sure.
vying for the same small pool of people. So we're looking at a different approach, which I will go through with you where we
Yeah.
are on that.
I'm sorry if I missed that point.
No,
yeah.
it's fine. It's
Now,
fine.
while I'm on screen, communications, I don't know whether it comes under IT or not, but I sat at a full council meeting the other night, and a very kind lady sat next to me, and I couldn't get into the meeting at all on my laptop. And then I was asked if I've got a password. I said, yeah, I've got quite a few passwords actually. I then found out that I'd got to ring Peter Manning to get a password. This sort of thing is not the first time. And if I've missed something, then it's my fault. But I'm not the only one. Perhaps I'm one of a few that are probably going to speak up and contradict this sort of movement. Communications, it's not good. It's not good. I mean, we should be able to get hold of this thing, whatever age we are. And I admit that, you know, I'm a bit in the past for these sort of things, but the communication is diabolical. And you sit there and you think, well, what's going on here? Thank you.
I'm not sure that comes under our remit or yours, does it?
Mine, but what I can do is feedback, because we're doing based on what we're doing, what's happened. Myself and Peter are working with other people in the organisation to look at our business continuity planning and our emergency planning, which will include how we communicate with people. So there are a lot of lessons to be learned, and we need to gather all of that and come up with a better way. And I do totally hear what you're saying, because we've had similar frustrations trying to work for 6 days where we couldn't access stuff. So I will feed that back for you, Councillor Ball. No, you haven't seen how blue the air has been through the throughout this building over a period of days.
Thank you. Anyone, Councillor Dumont?
Thank you very much. One question, or two questions, I suppose. How to find your brave? Wonder what that's all about. Just a little bit interested in what the content on that training might be. You might not know. But that just sounds quite exciting. Can we go with that one first?
I'll go with that one first. So How to Find Your Brave is a series of workshops for people to help them work out how they can be more resilient for themselves, the techniques they can use to manage their stress levels. It's all about well-being as we come out of COVID and people are reflecting on how they feel about home working and working here. And so it was a course or a series of workshops that were purchased in order to help people develop their resilience and be braver about some of the stuff they perhaps need to say but don't say. So that was the idea of that. We've just run the 5th workshop. We've got another one in December. As part of the package, we have all of the workshops on video on the internet. So anyone who couldn't attend is able to still see and get hints and tips. So we're going to do a full evaluation of the 6 after December with the people that attended and make recommendations for the future. I have to say, having attended one, it's done by people who are actors by profession, who talk about their own experiences of stage fright and what that means and how they cope with that and all their coping mechanisms. So it's been a very positively received. We haven't had as many people attend as we might like, but we've had quite a few people, and quite a few people are looking at the videos. And we've put something out again this week to say, you know, the videos are here if you want to see them. So that was what that was about.
And the other question was, thank you very much. The other question was in terms of the applicant tracking system. So it's good. It looks like that's in use now. And it says 51 employees have been trained. So that seems like a lot of people. So I'm surprised that many people are involved directly in it, but so I'd be interested in what kind of group that covers. But the real point I wanted to make is whenever a new system comes in and there's a new process, what's in place or who's got the oversight to make sure that there's a bit of actual human oversight and looking at the outcomes as well as the process that comes when a new bit of kit like this is put into place. Just because where we are, as Councillor Ball has mentioned, in terms of planning, we can't afford to miss anyone, and we've got to keep that momentum going with applicants. So I'm sure there is, but I'd just like to hear, make sure there is some human oversight.
Each of the HR officers is allocated a department, and they are the ones that work directly with that department on their recruitment issues. We also have an HR administrator who does a lot of the back end stuff, so tracks stuff through, make sure if someone's offers a job that contracts go out. What I am commissioning, because I don't think we've looked at it in its entirety for some time, through the Lean Six Sigma work that we're doing, I'm asking for an end-to-end review of all of the recruitment, including ATS, to make sure that we're doing the right thing at the right time, because it's okay us having an advert out, and if we got 20 brilliant applicants, we want to make sure that we get to those 20 before anyone else does. So the ATS system is still in its infancy. We have things we need to do to make it better, but I've suggested that we put that pause on that, get the end-to-end recruitment reviewed to say this is going to be the slickest, best process for East Herts, and make sure that ATS supports that, rather than sometimes with, and I've worked with many authorities where their applicant tracking system sometimes fights against you because it doesn't have automatic alerts and stuff like that. So we're looking at the whole thing. So there is a human interaction, unfortunately, a bit more than we'd like sometimes, because we haven't got all elements of ATS up and running. So we do have that. In terms of the numbers, we were really keen to get anybody involved in recruitment, including the HR and OD function, and other people who would be involved, so that they understood what their role was in the whole recruitment process. Because there are some things, when a post shuts, it's down to the manager to get in, get the CVs, shortlist, and tell us who they want to interview, and then we get stuff out. So we've tried to include anyone that might be involved to make sure that nothing falls down a crack.
Thank you very much. And as someone who's halfway through his black belt in Six Sigma myself, it's really reassuring to hear that it can be a powerful tool if it's deployed. So
It is.
that's very good to hear.
And just to follow up on that, it's not just about recruitment. We have to get our retention right as well. So for me, it's from the time when we think we might have a job we need to advertise, all the way through to someone's in post, they've had their induction and they've passed their probation, because that is a critical timeline for us about retention as well. We can't just look at recruitment, we have to look at them both.
It'll be almost a sad day when Councillor Dumont doesn't have a question on ATS, won't it? Yeah, you're a bit real expert on it now. Thank you. Any other questions, Councillor Buckmaster?
Thank you, Chair. It was on the equalities monitoring indicator. And again, interesting to read that. My thought was on the gender paragraph, where the leadership team, where obviously it's 51% of the population is female, but only 40% are on the leadership team. But we have 73% of employees, so we're a very heavy female heavy, employer. Yes.
And I think you'd find the same in most councils. They are very heavy on female employees. In terms of the leadership team, there are only 12 on the leadership team. So it's 10. It's a small percentage of the total. We are, one of the things that is with Richard at the moment to help with some of this stuff is a suggestion and recommendations for a talent management and succession planning scheme, where we actually look at who has the potential to go further in the organisation, and how do we support that? How do we give people opportunities to get confidence in applying for the next job up? So, and that will be open to everyone. We're also introducing a future managers program in the new year, which will be piloted next year with up to 10 people who aspire to either be a manager and leader of people, or a manager and leader of a process. So if you think about someone like Jackie Bruce, she has no staff, but she's a manager of a massive pot of money that she works with other partners on. So her role as a leader and influencing those other people is as important as if she had a team of 10. So we're developing this. So we are trying to give people opportunities and maybe give them a little bit of a leg up and a bit of confidence to be brave and to look for new things. And the other thing we're doing is a full skills audit in the new year, not only about your current job, but what have you done in the past that would actually work well for East Herts Council, and how, if you would like to have a change of career, what skill set have you got to enable that to happen. So these are things that are in the pipeline, hopefully will all be in by the end of this financial year to support some of the stuff you're saying.
Thank you. While you're talking about the percentages, I mean, it's very clear from this report how the percentages can look quite poor, like the employee turnover looks quite poor at 12.1%, but actually it's quite a small number that we have. So the Q2, is it, how many? Is that 2, 4, is that 6, is it? I think it's just 6 left, is it? Or 6, yeah, all right, 6. So very small numbers, but because of that, it skews all the percentages.
And whilst I can't give you a concrete answer about how many, we do have a lot of short-term contracts in the authority where we get pots of money to do a discrete piece of work. So some of the leavers are people who've come to the end of a contract as well. So it's not all about people walking away. And most recently, we've had 2 fantastic employees leave, but for one to move to another country and the other one to take a complete change of career. So not because they wanted to leave East Hearts, it was, you know, so.
Okay, thank you. I think all my questions are, yep, of course you can, Catherine.
Just a quick one. It just come to my mind after the last discussion and you mentioned Six Sigma. I didn't know the council employed that. Do we have any black belts and how many do we have?
I'm sorry, that's the question for Jess, because Jess runs the Six Sigma. We have how many people trained?
Well, as myself, in yellow and green belts, about 10 of us altogether, but no black belts. But Jess is responsible for the project overall with Helen.
Should we perhaps say for the benefit of other members, we're not talking about karate?
That would be a good idea. Would you like me to? Would you like me to
It's
provide
a business,
yeah.
well, you should have to tell us. It's part of the qualification to be able to do that.
Yeah. So it draws 2 disciplines together. One is lean and the other is Six Sigma, and they were the one was developed in the UK originally, one was developed in the US. They never really took off over here, but the Japanese definitely took it on board, and it's looking at process change, process management, waste reduction. So it's looking at the process from part 1 right through to end product to challenge those existing, you know, old ways. You know, we've always done it that way. And it's actually going back to the drawing board and drilling down to find out, why do we do that? What value does it add to what we produce or what we deliver? How many stages does it take to process either an application or to deal with a complaint? It's looking at the whole process right from the word go and trying to find ways and solutions to remove wasteful products. So it's the paper moving about. So I hand my paper to Ellie. Ellie hands it to the chair. Chair hands it back to me. You know, does it need to go through that process? Can we streamline that? Can we make it a more efficient, more effective service? Do we need 15 steps when we might be able to do that in 5 steps? So it's about challenging convention and the reasons why we do things. Quite often when you look back, you can't find the original reason. And if I could just cite as an example, when we were doing our training, one of the tutors was brought into a big company in London, financial company, and he noticed that on all the documentation that was being processed was a box in the corner of the paper, and it had LA written, and they would put 0 through it, and it would go on and go on. So he challenged, what was this LA all about? And no one could tell him. Oh, it's because we've always been told that's what we do. We fill that in and put a 0. It took him a little while, but eventually he found the person who could answer the question. The form was based on a Ministry of Defence document in World War II. LA stood for London Air Raids, of which there were none. but they just carried on using the form. So it's about challenging that small process and how much time is wasted by producing lengthy documents. Do we need to produce them? Officers' time when they have to go back and trawl through information? Can we provide it to you in a simplified, easier to read approach? Can we deliver services with a cost saving? So what we do is we compile after the reviews recommendations which we present to the leadership team, and then those services that we've been looking at are given the responsibility to see if they can enable some of those changes. And I've just completed a review with a colleague on our customer complaints, and I believe we had feedback that we now have purchased a CRM system, customer management system. So it will actually eliminate the need for complaints to be recorded on a very old-fashioned system, which then requires a lot of manual data entry onto another system. So this whole area of waste where an officer has to run through all this data, do a data cleanse, pull out all the bits they don't need, condense it, do a manual calculation, transfer it, will all be removed just by identifying a different approach to the way we do things. And it's about blending those two processes, bringing them together. So as I say, there's two strands. Lean looks at the process review. The Six Sigma element is more statistical based and looks at the percentage times. That's not my particular ballpark, but I have got colleagues in the team who are very good with the numbers, very good with the figures, and they do the number crunching. But it's a very good collaborative approach that we have taken, and we're utilizing the skills of our people in-house rather than looking outside. So it's a very, very good learning and development opportunity, but it also gives some of those colleagues part of that brave aspect because they're being asked to do something outside their comfort zone. And that in essence is Lean Six.
Thank you. That's a lot of information there, which is really useful and interesting. Thank you. We don't usually have time to go into that much detail. Councillor Alder.
Working in the health service, I was PA to the group secretary, and I looked in a cupboard and it was absolutely stuffed full. We could not use the cupboard and I needed the space. And it was the bed state of the hospitals over the last 40 years. And I said, why are we collecting these? He said, I don't know. He said, we've always had them. So I said, well, do we need them? He said, no. So I said, well, let's get rid of them then, which they did. And it's a new pair of eyes.
Yeah.
And it's the new eyes that quite often spot things that can be rectified fairly simply.
Absolutely.
But need to be, you know, you need to go with a fine tooth comb and be a bit ruthless.
And
Chuck it out.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And it's a big piece of work that colleagues in environmental health and housing and health have just undertaken. We've removed a number of the tall cabinets that had documents that resembled papyrus in some cases, or ancient scrolls. It's no longer valid. It doesn't carry purpose. People hang on to it desperately. And I admit I used to be that person, but you do get used to it. It's just a different concept.
Thank you.
My husband always says, well, make sure you take a copy first.
Yeah, I can see Councillor Ruffle shuddering in the corner as well. Yeah, thank you. Any other comments on this? So we're just it's for consideration, isn't it? So we're just receiving that document. Thank you. And the only other item is number 7, urgent business. Anything else you wish to add?
I'd wanted to talk to you about the planning stuff, if that's okay.
Are you going to do that now?
Yeah,
Okay,
that works for
thank
you. Fine. But again, apologies about the mix up. So we know we've got problems in planning. We know we've got a lot of vacancies in planning. We know we're spending far too much on agency staff in planning. Some of the things that have happened in the past were the introduction of a £5,000 welcome payment, which was recommended by the head of finance. That hasn't worked for us since I've been here, we've advertised jobs. We've tried to make the job titles a little bit more sexy, if you like, to get people to think about things differently. And it really hasn't worked for us. So we're going to do a campaign-based approach to this. We have created a separate landing page for planning on our internet site so that they don't arrive at what everybody else arrives at, which is essentially when do my bins get collected and everything. This is actually going straight into a bespoke page that has videos on it of people who are involved in the planning process. Sarah, who's head of planning, to talk about the sort of exciting developments there are going to be, whether they be small developments or larger developments over East Herts Council. But it also talks about the work we're doing across Hertfordshire in having an academy type approach to learning. So rather than our planners learning just here, we're actually promoting that across the board so that we don't fight with each other all the time. We actually work together a little bit more. And it gives, and the power in numbers, then it's cheaper for us to all work together on some of the stuff that's common. We've also introduced career grades to our roles. So they were taken out largely through single status about 12 years ago, but we've reintroduced them to try and give recognition that when you qualify as a planner, actually it's the experience you get after your qualification that makes you a really good planner, not the qualification itself. That tells you where to start, what you can and can't do. So we've introduced a career grade to give people who, as they go through and get more experience and move on to bigger things, the opportunity to stretch into a higher grade. Obviously, with that comes more responsibility. We're not just giving away money, but we are trying to then say, when a person reaches this level, this is the sort of thing that they'll deal with. So we've done that. Using the pay policy, there's an item in the pay policy that says we are allowed to consider market forces supplement. Now, bear in mind that we tried the 5,000 welcome payment that people didn't get until they passed their probation. That didn't work for us. So rather than continue down that line, we've decided to not do that anymore. And what we are working with under the current pay policy is, can we apply a market forces supplement to the roles instead? So there's a big piece of work happening at the moment. Myself and Stephen, Lynette and Sarah are going through all of the figures to say, what is our tipping point to make it work for us? At the moment, if you see what we spend on agency, you know, we only have to get half a dozen in and we've more than made our money. So that piece of work is happening. So we're hoping to finish that piece of finance tomorrow. It's been to leadership team and been agreed in principle subject to this piece of work. If that works for us and we attract the sort of people we want and we can fill some of these vacancies, we can then use that as a model going forward for other hard to fill jobs like environmental health. So, you know, we are trying something different. We have invested a lot of time in getting the adverts sorted, getting a copywriter to help us so they don't all start with, we have an exciting opportunity to join East Herts Council. So that's where we are in recognition, you know, we need to do something different.
Okay, so this was part of the pay policy, I think section 7 of the pay policy that we passed here earlier this year, was it February, March? So this is, you're doing this as a business case, that's right, isn't it? So it's a temporary.
Yeah, so what we're trying to do is make it more business focused, because in my role, I get a lot of shroud waving, if you like, where people are quite desperate to fill jobs and it's like, oh, well, you know, we're never going to fill it. And actually what we want to be, especially with our financial position, we need to be far more business focused and commercially focused in the way we approach these things. So I've put together a framework of things, of steps you have to go through in order you get the answer at the bottom, either yes, market forces supplement will work, or no, it's not the right thing. So once we've done an evaluation of this, we will then be proposing, if it works, that is the framework that supports the pay policy where it says you can consider a market forces supplement.
And then presumably you go through the specific, you're doing the terms and conditions then as you're going along. but it's always going to be a temporary element because that's how it is in the pay policy.
So the framework says you have to review every year, but you have to do a full in-depth, totally start from scratch every 3 years. So, you know, we will be, it's not just forever, and everybody knows it will be reviewed year on year.
Thank you. Any more comments, councillor Ball?
Yes, thank you for that. Unfortunately, I don't know how you can think up a system to stop it, but in the past, what happened, when it happened for a very long time, you get the planners, you know, really trained up, top hole, first class, and then you'd lose them. They'd go to a developer, more money, more conditions and what have you. Is there any way that you can kind of tie them into some sort of contract? Because it's good what you say, you get them trained up first class, but then all you're doing is pushing them on to somewhere better for their finance and conditions of working. I don't know how you could.
We can't tie them in. We can't do that. But what we can do is look at the total package. A lot of developers offer the money, but they don't offer some of the other stuff like our pension and all of that. So we're trying to describe the whole package. And interestingly, I've just done a review of the exit interviews where people have bothered to have them because not everybody does. And the main reason for planners leaving isn't necessarily more money. So I think we're taking mind of that as well. But yeah, we can't stop people. What we can do is make people feel that they belong in this organisation as part of a family, that they'll be supported, they will get, but we're never going to be higher quarter payers. We can't compete. But what we can do is offer the total package about what it's like to work here, free car parking, which most providers, most private sector organisations do not provide. You park somewhere down the road and have to walk to where you go. So there are things that we are highlighting as a benefit of working here. And some of them are just features, but the features are better than a lot of the Persimmon homes, the Bovises. Yeah, well, we have to try what we can and learn and adapt. And that's, you know.
Because
Thank you. Any other questions or comments, councillor Dumont?
Only to say thank you for bringing us information, because we've been asking these questions. I still think it's going to be tough. You're up against it. And I think the reality, I'm no expert on the job market for planning. You know, I don't, to be honest, a huge technical knowledge on what the different jobs in planning do. I mean, you can see some of the jobs are hugely rewarding here. And if you look at, if I'm allowed to mention someone like Kevin Steptoe, I've had the fortune of dealing with. There's some of the, he's really shaping the area, you know, in what he does. So there's that career path there, but until that gap can be closed between the private sector and the public sector, and I think you are going to still be up against it. But thank you for your efforts.
Thank you. Anyone else? No. Thank you very much for bringing that to the committee. Have you got anything else to add?
Few things that we're working on that haven't been completed yet, but since we last met, and I know this is predominantly about the previous quarter, but I just wanted to update you on a few things. We're doing a whole review of the corporate induction process. We want to make it, going back to why should people work here? We want people to have that emotional engagement from day one. In fact, we want it before that. So going back to recruitment, what we're going to do for this campaign and moving on, if we get a great applicant applies on the first day of the job's advertised, we're not going to wait till it shuts. We're going to ring them up. Love your application. Can you come and see us this week? Because we've got so many. We're not disadvantaging anybody. So in terms of emotional engagement, we want the corporate induction to continue on that theme as part of the onboarding about why would you want to work here? How does it feel to work here? Rather than this is our corporate plan. This is where you go to the toilet. This is, you know, so we're trying to make things a lot more emotionally engaging for people. As I said, we've done the 4 of the Lean Six Sigma processes. We are going to be doing the recruitment one as well. And we're also looking at some of the outcomes of the other 4 that have been done to say, is there an HR, is there something HR and OD can to support those changes? 19 recommendations were agreed at leadership team when the presentations were done. Some of them are small, but actually a lot of these things have a multiplying factor when you put them all together. So we're looking at that as well. The Future Managers Programme, as I've mentioned, will be ready for people, and we're going to brand it as something special, which it is, because a lot of organisations don't do that. We're having new leadership programmes as well. There'll be a new management programme, a 2-day programme on all of the management essentials, and there'll be other programmes as well. Some of our own experts internally will be helping them to develop those programmes. So things like how to handle complaints. Some of the feedback was, we don't do it very well. We don't challenge ourselves to say, actually, should we have done that, or should we have done something different? So we're looking at that as well. So that will be developed over the next few months. So next year we'll be running on cooking on gas, basically. Where, you know, all the stuff will be there. We're looking at talent management and succession, because we're really clear that there is key roles. If people left for any reason, we haven't got a natural successor. Then we get into the whole thing we do now, where we advertise and we're competing with everybody else who's got the same problem. So trying to home grow a few people is part of our ambition as well. In terms of the payroll, one of the Lean Six groups looked at payroll from start to finish. So we're taking the outcomes of that review, and Simon, as part of his work, as part of his phase return, is looking at that. So looking at our payroll processes, we're currently formally creating workbooks for each element of the payroll run, because at the moment we have Jill, who's brilliant, but if Jill again got run over by the number 10 bus, we haven't really got a backup on that. So we're making sure, again, going back to your point, Councillor Alder, about, you know, open a cupboard and there's stuff going back 20 years. So we're sorting all of that out to make sure that we can continue to run payroll. And all credit to Jill, with all of the problems we had over the last few days, we got payroll done and everyone will get paid, or everyone got paid, which was no mean feat with the challenges we had. So it was everyone roll up their sleeves and get on and do it. We're also ready to pay everybody the pay rise in December, with all of the backdated, everything backdated, including overtime and other elements that they get. So in terms of payroll, we're working really hard to make sure it's still excellent. And that's one of the, having worked in lots of authorities, we don't accept an error margin on payroll. We make sure it's right every time. Other authorities will accept a 10% error margin and have to do loads of back transfers or clawbacks the following week. So we're trying very hard on that. We are, Eats Hearts Together is still going strong. We are ramping up the transformation programme again. Unfortunately, Lydia was poorly for a while, but that's now ramping up again. So we're reviewing, in light of all of the budget changes that have happened since some of those papers were put together earlier on in the year. The world is different now, as we all know. So they're all being reviewed, ready to transform services, which is why we need a lot of our processes looked at as well. We continue to support some of our colleagues in places like Broxbourne, but we have recommended to Broxbourne that they've got 2 HR posts. I've always said, and so has Simon and so has Richard, we can only trade services out if we have the capacity to do so. The primary focus has to be Eats Hearts Council. And as we're ramping up all of these things to make it better to be an employee, and our services in the light of where we are, the best they can be for our residents, we have to focus on East Hearts. So if we ever had any I touch wood, if we ever had any capacity, of course we would trade, but we'll always offer advice and guidance if people need it. We just can't take on massive pieces of work for them anymore. I think there's they're most of the things we're working on. And as I say, I can put these into, and again, another apology, I'll put these into the format that we're used to and send it out to you in the next week or so, if that's okay.
Thank you. Our payroll have been brilliant. They've always done this. They've managed to pull out the the rabbit's out of the hat or whatever the phrase is. They have been brilliant for a long time. Any other questions or comments on that? Thank you for that update. Right, haven't got any other further items of urgent business. So that's the end of the meeting. Thank you very much.